What happened next will break your heart, before it heals it. Before we begin, let us know in the comments where in the world you're watching from. And make sure to subscribe, because the next chapters of this story will shake you more than the Texas thunderstorm that started it all. The night in West Texas was alive with thunder, each roar rolling across the endless plains like a warning. Rain hammered against the tin roof of a lonely wooden cabin, sharp, rhythmic, relentless. The scent of wet earth mixed with the cedarwood smoke curling out of the chimney, forming a smell that carved itself deep into memory. Wind howled between the mesquite trees, carrying with it a sense of something inevitable, something coming. From the storm emerged a fragile silhouette, stumbling but determined. It was Rabia. Every step she took through the mud told a story of exhaustion, her coat torn, her shoes soaked, her hands trembling. She gathered the last of her strength and knocked on the wooden door, each knock a desperate plea. When the door finally creaked open, warm light spilled out, revealing the tall, rugged man inside. Mehar Hale. A quiet cowboy who had chosen a life of solitude at the edge of nowhere. Rain dripped from Rabia's hair as she whispered something no one could have expected, an offer of her body in exchange for shelter. The storm outside growled, as though nature itself was holding its breath. Mehar's jaw tightened. His eyes, hard but wounded, didn't show desire. They showed something deeper, something unreadable. Slowly, he shook his head. His voice, steady as carved stone, broke the silence. You don't owe me anything. What happened after that moment, you won't see coming. What do you think unfolds next? Comment below with your city and country, and don't forget to subscribe for the shocking twist ahead. The rain softened but did not stop, dripping from the edges of the tin roof in slow, steady rhythms, like the fading heartbeat of a storm that refused to die. Humidity clung to the wooden cabin, filling the air with the thick scent of smoke and damp earth. Rabia stood at the threshold, unsure, her breath shaky, her eyes wide with fear and fatigue. She looked like someone who had been running for far too long. Mehar, with the hardened posture of a man shaped by desert winds and loneliness, held her gaze without speaking. The silence stretched, heavy and electric, until he finally stepped aside with a sharp motion of his hand. Come in. Before you freeze. Rabia moved hesitantly into the warmth. The heat from the fire struck her first, stealing a breath from her chest. Her boots squished against the wooden floor, making it clear how drenched she was. The interior of the cabin was simple, a scarred wooden table, a worn-out armchair near the fire, shelves filled with scattered books, and tools hanging neatly on the far wall. No luxury, only the quiet dignity of a life built by tired hands. Once he shut the door, Mehar stood still, his back to her, staring out at the fading curtain of rain. His silhouette against the firelight seemed carved out of stone, strong, lonely, unmovable. Thank you, Rabia whispered. He turned around, studying her, not in judgment, but as a man who recognized pain when he saw it. Her trembling hands. The mud on her dress. The thinness that spoke of hunger and sleepless nights. You can leave your things by the fire, he said calmly. She nodded and removed her soaked coat, dropping it over a chair. Silence filled the cabin again, broken only by the crackle of firewood. Mehar opened a cabinet and pulled out a thick wool blanket. He handed it to her, his movements stiff but sincere. She wrapped it over her shoulders, feeling warmth seep slowly into her bones. Still, her heart raced. She was in the house of a man she didn't know, a man whose quietness was both comforting and intimidating. Mehar sat at the table, leaning forward on his elbows, staring into the flames. You don't have to explain yourself, he said. But you walked a long way to knock on a stranger's door. Rabia swallowed. The weight on her chest felt suffocating. I had nowhere else to go, she murmured. You runnin' from someone? He asked, not curious, not prying. Just, certain. She lowered her eyes and nodded. The silence stretched again. Mehar leaned back, exhaling heavily. He wasn't a man used to visitors, much less broken ones. But there was something familiar in the pain he saw in her eyes, something that touched an old wound inside him. Rabia finally spoke, her voice trembling as she forced the truth out. Someone followed me. Someone who wouldn't accept that I left. Mehar's eyes sharpened, but he asked no questions. Instead, he poured water from a metal jug and offered it to her. "Drink," he said simply. "You need strength." As she sipped, their eyes met again. Something passed between them, a quiet understanding between two souls carrying scars deeper than words. Mehar wasn't just a stranger. His presence felt strangely safe, even as his silence felt heavy, as if he carried a past he refused to speak of. Rabia dared to ask the question that had been haunting her, "Why let me stay, if you don't want anything from me?" His brow lifted, surprised by her frankness. After a moment, he answered with a voice low and steady, "Because I know what it's like to have no one left to turn to." The word struck her in the chest. There was pain behind that sentence, raw, unresolved pain. As the minutes passed, Rabia settled into the armchair, clutching the blanket. Her eyes grew heavy, though her mind stayed alert. The sound of Mehar moving in the kitchen was strangely soothing, the first hint of safety she'd felt in months. He offered her a piece of bread and leftover stew. She hesitated, then accepted. The warmth of the food brought color back to her cheeks. She glanced at him under the flickering light. The fire highlighted the rugged lines of his face, the quiet strength in his jaw, the loneliness etched into his eyes. She wasn't sure whether to trust him, but her body, exhausted and bruised, relaxed despite herself. The silence between them grew softer, heavier with unspoken connection. Not desire, not yet, but something deeper, something timid and wounded. Outside, the soaked earth held footprints no wind would erase. Rabia sensed danger, but Mehar sensed it too. He didn't say it. He didn't have to. For tonight, they shared a fragile peace, one built on desperation, fear, and a strange, unexpected hope. And neither of them knew that this night was only the beginning. The fire had burned low, reduced to glowing embers that pulsed softly with every draft that slipped through the cabin's wooden frame. Rabia had drifted into an uneasy sleep in the armchair, the blanket wrapped tightly around her small frame. Her breaths were shallow, her body still trembling even in rest. Mehar watched her for a long moment, leaning against the table with arms crossed. The storm had finally died outside, leaving behind a deep, unsettling stillness across the Texas plains. He could feel it. The night was too quiet. Too still. He walked to the window, pushing aside the curtain just enough to see outside. The moon was veiled by drifting clouds. Mud glistened under its pale silver light. And something else, tracks. Fresh ones. Leading toward the cabin. Mehar's jaw locked. Someone had been there. Recently. He returned to the table, lowering himself into the chair opposite Rabia. He didn't wake her. Not yet. Her face, lit faintly by the dying fire, carried the kind of exhaustion that only comes from living in fear for far too long. He knew that feeling. More than she could ever guess. His hand brushed unconsciously over the scar at his collarbone, a sharp, pale line hidden under the fabric. A memory he couldn't forget. A reminder that he, too, had once been hunted. Outside, a wolf howled. Or maybe it wasn't a wolf. Maybe it was a warning. Rabia stirred suddenly. Her eyes blinked open, filled with fear even before she fully woke. Was I asleep long? She murmured. A bit, Mehar replied. You needed it. She pulled the blanket tighter. I dreamed that he found me. Standing right outside the door. Her voice shook, and Mehar's chest tightened. That dream might not be far from the truth, he said quietly. Rabia froze. What do you mean? Mehar didn't sugarcoat it. There are fresh tracks in the mud. Not mine. Not yours. Someone was here after the rain stopped. Her breath hitched. He's coming. I knew he would. I knew he would never let me go. Mehar crouched beside her, his voice calm but firm. "Rabia, you're safe here. As long as I'm standing, no one touches you." She looked at him, uncertainty mixed with hope. "Why? You don't even know me." Mehar's eyes darkened. "You don't need to know someone to recognize their fear. I've lived it. I've survived it. And I'm not letting you face it alone." For a moment, neither spoke. There was only the low crackle of embers and the whisper of the wind brushing against the walls. Rabia swallowed. "He won't stop. He said if I ever left him, he'd hunt me. He'd drag me back even if he had to." Mehar lifted a hand, gently stopping her before her voice broke. "Let him come," he said. "Some men only understand one language." "And what's that?" she whispered. "Strength." He stood, walked to a wooden chest in the corner, and pulled out something heavy. A rifle, well-oiled, well-kept. Rabia's heart pounded. "You're preparing for a fight?" she asked softly. "I'm preparing for whatever walks out of that darkness," Mehar answered. The room fell into tense silence. Outside, the night pressed closer, heavy with unseen danger. Rabia moved toward him slowly. "I don't want anyone hurt because of me." Mehar looked at her with a steady, unwavering gaze. "You being alive is worth fighting for." She didn't know how to respond. No one had ever said anything like that to her. No one had ever seen her as something worth protecting, not even herself. Then, suddenly, a sharp creak outside. A heavy footstep. Rabia stiffened. Mehar raised the rifle without hesitation, every muscle in his body going still, focused. Another footstep. Closer. Too close. Then. Bang. Bang. Heavy knocks on the door. Not desperate. Not polite. Confident. Commanding. Mehar motioned for Rabia to stay behind him. She obeyed instantly, trembling so violently she could barely breathe. A voice broke through the silence. A voice Rabia recognized. A voice that turned her blood cold. "Rabia." The man outside laughed darkly. "You think you can hide from me? Open the damn door. Now." Rabia covered her mouth to stifle a sob. Mehar stepped closer to the door but didn't open it. His voice was steel. "Leave. While you still can." There was a pause. Then the man laughed again. "Who the hell are you? Step aside. She's mine." Mehar's grip on the rifle tightened. "She belongs to no one." A fist slammed against the door so hard the wood splintered. Rabia flinched. Mehar didn't. "Rabia," the man screamed. "Come out here, or I'll burn this place to the ground." Mehar had heard enough. He turned slightly, just enough to meet Rabia's eyes. She was shaking her head, silently pleading for something she didn't know how to ask. "Do you trust me?" Mehar whispered. Her voice trembled. "Yes. I do." He stepped to the door, planted his boots firmly on the ground, took a slow breath, and opened it. The cold night air flooded inside. On the porch stood a tall, violent-eyed man with a pistol in hand and a twisted grin spreading across his face. "There you are," the man sneered. "Hand her over." Mehar didn't blink. "Turn around. Walk away." The man raised the pistol. "Move, cowboy." Rabia gasped. But Mehar didn't move. Seconds stretched. A single heartbeat. Then. Boom. A shot echoed across the plains. Rabia screamed. But Mehar didn't fall. He didn't bleed. He had fired first. The man staggered backward, dropping his pistol in shock. His legs buckled beneath him. He collapsed into the mud, gasping, staring at Mehar with disbelief. Rabia covered her mouth, trembling uncontrollably. Mehar lowered the rifle. His breath was steady, his eyes cold and unshaken. "It's over," he said, stepping back into the cabin. Rabia looked at him with a mixture of horror and overwhelming relief. You saved me." Mehar set the rifle down gently. "You deserved a chance at life. That's all,